The black door opens fully. It's no longer just a wooden surface. It's alive. The air around it pulsates, rippling as if it's breathing. The red glow from within spills into the hallway, casting long shadows. Daniel stands at the threshold, hesitating, his body trembling with anticipation and dread. His reflection is distorted in the glass, the house distorting him too. Cut 2. Daniel takes a deep breath. The whispers begin again, distant, muffled, almost soothing. They call to him. His name reverberates off the walls of the house, familiar yet alien. His hands begin to tremble as he steps forward. The temperature drops with every movement. His breath becomes visible in the cold air. Scene: the descent into memory. The moment Daniel crosses the threshold of the door, he is no longer in the hallway. He finds himself plunging downward, as though falling into the bowels of the earth. His body twists and turns in the air, as if gravity no longer applies. There's no light, only the pounding sound of his own heartbeat, growing louder and faster as the fall continues. He crashes to the ground, landing with a sickening thud. He opens his eyes and realizes he's in a room he recognizes. The walls are familiar, the same cracked wallpaper, the same dusty corners. It's his childhood home. But something's wrong. Everything is darker, more decayed, and the time here feels off. The house seems to breathe. The air shifts as though the house is alive, feeding on the presence of the living. Daniel stumbles to his feet, his head spinning. Scene: the Hall of Forgotten Faces. As he explores, he finds himself drawn to a hallway. The portraits on the walls are disturbing. Faces from his past, all twisted, their eyes gouged out, their mouths frozen in screams. But there's a catch. Each portrait is staring at him, even though they should not be. Each one seems to call his name. He stumbles backward, but the walls close in around him, pulling him forward. His pulse quickens. He begins to hear voices, his father, his mother, his own voice. But none of them sound right. All are distorted. All are asking the same question. Why did you leave us? The hallway seems endless, stretching beyond reason. The walls pulse with each step he takes. He feels as though the house itself is closing in on him, as though the walls are alive. Suddenly, the girl in the red dress appears again, standing at the end of the corridor. Her face is no longer hidden by her hair. It's his mother. Her eyes are empty, hollow, black. You shouldn't have come back, Daniel. You buried us here. You buried me here. She extends a hand toward him. He takes a step forward, but the house shifts again. The walls buckle and the floor gives way, revealing a pit of writhing shadows beneath. The door slams shut behind him. Scene: the house is alive. The house groans, and the entire structure seems to twist. The floor beneath him begins to move, as if the house itself is alive, pulsing, breathing. The door that he entered through is now gone. There is no way back. The walls close in on him. He presses his hand against them, feeling the texture shift from wood to skin, soft, clammy, and warm. The house is not just a structure. It is something more. Suddenly, a hidden door opens before him, revealing a dark staircase that leads further down into the earth. As he descends, the air grows colder, thicker with the scent of decay. The sound of dripping water echoes through the walls. The deeper he goes, the more the house seems to be pulling him down. Scene: the grave. Beneath the house. At the bottom of the stairs, Daniel enters a large underground chamber. The air is thick with dust, and the floor is covered in broken stones, some of which have names carved into them, his name among them. He kneels, his hands trembling as he touches the stone. Beneath it, a faint glow emerges. The glow grows brighter until the entire room is bathed in an eerie red light. His pulse races as the ground beneath him cracks open. Something stirs beneath. He reaches down, but before his fingers can touch the earth, the shadows rise, tendril-like shapes that grab at his arms, pulling him deeper into the earth. Scene: the truth of the door. The shadows form into human shapes, not ghosts, but memories, distorted, faceless, and twisted. They reach for him with cold, dead hands. Each figure whispers his name, begging for release. Suddenly he sees a figure emerge from the shadows. It's the man from the photograph, the one he saw in the first part of his journey. The man stands tall, but there's something wrong. His face is a mask of terror, his eyes wide and hollow. He holds a lantern, the same lantern Daniel saw earlier in his childhood room. The man steps forward, his voice cold and hoarse. "You've come too far, Daniel. The door you opened has brought you here, but this is not a place of escape, it is a prison, and now you belong to it." The ground trembles as the door reappears, this time behind Daniel. He turns to face it, but the door is no longer black. It's covered in thick living veins, pulsating with dark energy. The shadows around him rise, forming into the faces of everyone he has ever known. His mother, his father, even his younger self, all screaming for him to stop. Daniel reaches out to the door, his fingers brushing against the living wood, and in that instant, he realizes he is part of the house now. Scene: the final choice. With no way out, Daniel faces the final truth. The house doesn't trap people. It remembers them. The door doesn't open to the outside world. It opens to the inside, to the memories, to the darkness buried deep within. The house feeds on its occupants' deepest fears and regrets, twisting them into its own twisted reflection. The girl in the red dress appears once more. Her voice echoes through his mind. "You left us here. You buried me here. Now you will live with us. Forever." The door beckons. He takes one final step forward. As he touches the knob, he is pulled inside. Cut to black. A single heartbeat echoes in the darkness. Final title card. The Forgotten Door. What was buried lives the end, or is it?
In a majestic, enchanted forest, vibrant green leaves rustle softly as a gentle breeze makes its way through the towering trees. Shafts of golden sunlight dance delicately on the forest floor, creating a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. An orange cat, small yet filled with the kind of bold curiosity that prompts adventure, steps cautiously among the ferns. As the cat explores deeper, the sound of rushing water draws its attention. Peering through tall grass, it spots a humble turtle caught in the powerful embrace of a river current. The turtle, with years evident in the wise lines on its shell, struggles to maintain its footing. Without hesitation, the cat's instincts leap to the forefront. Eyes narrowing with determination, it bounds forward, plunging into the cool, swirling waters. Despite the turbulent current, the cat perseveres and reaches the struggling turtle. Wet and weary but triumphant, the cat manages to pull the turtle to the safety of the riverbank. Here they rest side by side, catching their breath amid the tranquil symphony of singing birds and rustling leaves. Gratitude is visible in the turtle's slow nod. The bond between them forms silently, nurtured by the shared experience of courage and companionship, a mutual understanding passing between their different eyes. Their adventure is not yet over, as the forest is full of hidden dangers. The cat, unfamiliar with this enchanted terrain, is guided by the turtle's wisdom. The turtle observes, senses, and determines paths unseen by many, steering them safely through the labyrinth of traps that have ensnared less wise creatures. Under the turtle's guidance, they navigate the perils with calm efficiency, the cat's trust unwavering. Finally, as the golden sun begins to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange, pink, and purple, the cat and turtle climb to the top of a cliff. The forest, now a sprawling sea of trees below them, its serene beauty stretching far into the horizon. Together, they gaze at the peaceful valley, a testament to their newfound friendship and the courage that brought them here. The sunset bathes them both in warm light as they sit side by side, sharing a quiet moment of victory and camaraderie, knowing their story is just beginning.
Something happened to my mom after she retired. She became superstitious. She read tarot cards, kept a lucky rabbit's foot by the phone, and constantly knocked on wood. Dad just rolled his eyes and teased her about being a crazy old woman, but it got worse when she found a book on magic in the attic. According to the book, you could conjure up a familiar, a creature that could help you with small tasks, give you advice, and protect you. My mom was convinced this was her calling. She bought all the ingredients, even though we argued. Every time she tried to perform a ritual, I tried to stop her, but she was determined to complete the summoning circle. One day, Mom invited her friend over to help. She explained what we had planned, and her friend looked skeptical. "Are you sure this is wise? Familiars are tricky. If you anger them, they could bring misfortune instead of good luck." "I won't be swayed," Mom said firmly. "I want to try." As I watched them set up the ritual, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. This was crazy. My dad warned me not to interfere because he didn't want to upset my mom in her golden years. But I was worried she'd hurt herself. When everything was ready, my mom stood in the middle of the circle. She held an old crystal ball and faced my sister and I. "Do you understand what you're doing?" I asked her. "Yes," she said calmly. "Now please leave me alone. I need to concentrate." My sister and I exchanged worried glances. We weren't supposed to watch, but there was something in Mom's face, in her voice, that made us pause. Perhaps it was the unusual intensity in her eyes, or the way she repeated the words from the book. My sister and I were curious. We hid and eavesdropped outside the door. "Great Old One, I call upon the ancient spirit of power and knowledge. Grant me thy favor. Let a familiar be mine to guide me and assist me in my endeavors. So mote it be." There was a moment of silence, followed by a low rumble, like thunder from far away. "Beware," a voice echoed from within the room, "for I am a spirit of chaos. I thrive on unpredictability and delight in causing harm. If you wish me to be your familiar, you must accept these traits within me." Mom hesitated for a moment. "I understand," she finally replied. "I will accept you with all your strengths and weaknesses. Show yourself to me." Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles and sending the papers flying. My mom screamed and instinctively covered her head with her arms. Then slowly, hesitantly, she uncovered her eyes. "Who's there? Show yourself." The darkness seemed to deepen. The wind began to swirl faster, almost creating a vortex in the center of the circle. And then it stopped. Silence hung heavy in the air. "Show yourself," Mom said again, her voice trembling slightly. Then she gasped. In front of her, the orb floated above the table, glowing brightly. And there, looking back at her, was an image. At first, it was just a blur, but as the orb rotated slowly, the details became clearer. It was the face of an owl, intelligent, knowing, and strangely menacing. As the orb continued rotating, the image of the owl was replaced by that of a raven, equally intelligent, equally ominous. Finally, it settled on a creature that sent shivers down my spine, a grotesque humanoid figure with bulging eyes, sharp teeth, gnashing claws, and a twisted grin that seemed to mock her. My mom stumbled backward. I didn't agree to this," she stammered. "Change it," she pleaded. "Change it back." But the creature just laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the room, and then it vanished. All that was left was the orb, floating silently in the darkness. Mom fell to her knees, overwhelmed with fear. "It's too late!" The voice boomed, echoing her fear. "You have called me forth, and now I am yours to command. I am chaos, I am misfortune, I am your curse." My mom screamed and scrambled back, knocking over the table and sending the orb crashing to the floor, where it shattered into a million pieces. She ran out of the room, leaving my dad and us kids behind. When we went into the room, the only thing we found was the broken orb. The summoning circle had vanished, and no sign of my mom could be found. We searched the entire house, but she was nowhere too. We called her name, but only silence answered us. We called the police, but they couldn't find her either, and as days turned into weeks, we began to lose hope. I blamed myself for not listening to my mom and stopping the ritual. I replayed every moment in my head, searching for clues, wondering if I had done something to cause this. And then the nightmares began. I dreamt of dark figures with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws that stalked me through shadowy landscapes. They taunted me, whispering about my mother's foolish choices and how her summoning had gone awry. They told me she was trapped somewhere, held captive by the very chaos she had unleashed. I woke up every morning drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. The nightmares felt so real, I could still hear their laughter echoing in my ears, feel their presence lurking at the edge of my vision. Then one day, my dad came to me with a grave look on his face. "We found something," he said quietly, "in the garden." He led me to a spot where a circle of flowers had been crushed, as if someone or something had been lying in the middle of it. And there, partially buried in the dirt, was the pendant. My mom always wore it. Relief flooded through me. At least she was alive. But where was she? That night the dreams came back, stronger than before. I saw my mom in a dark, dank place, her eyes wide with fear as the same dark figures approached her. She was kneeling beside a new summoning circle, her pendant lying on the ground in front of her. Then she began to chant, "Great Old One, I call upon thee, ancient spirit of power and knowledge. Grant me thy favor, let my mum be returned to me, so mote it be." And then the most terrifying thing happened. One of the dark figures bent down and picked up the pendant. For a moment it seemed as if nothing happened. And then the figure raised its head, its glowing eyes fixed on me. "She will return," it said in a voice that dripped with malice, "but not as you know her. Oh no, she will be something far worse, something that brings nothing but pain and destruction." Then the figure vanished. In the morning, I told my dad about my dream. He listened, his face growing grimmer by the second. "We need to destroy the orb," he said finally. "What orb?" I asked, confused, but before he could explain, the lights flickered and went out. We were plunged into total darkness, and then we heard it, a blood-curdling scream that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. It echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls, refusing to be contained. And then silence. Heavy, thick silence. It pressed against our ears, muffling the sound of our own breathing. It was as if the house was holding its breath. We stood there frozen, listening, hoping against hope that it was just a figment of our imagination. But then, the silence shattered. A crash, something heavy hitting the floor. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, creaking the floorboards as it moved closer. The bedroom door rattled violently as if something was trying to break in. And then, just as abruptly as it started, it stopped. But my dad wasn't taking any chances. He grabbed a baseball bat and crept out of the house. I stayed behind, paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, a dark figure materialized in the doorway. Its eyes glowed ominously in the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, its voice like nails scraping down a chalkboard. Before I could scream, it lunged towards me. I backed away, tripping over my own feet. The figure advanced, its claws extended, ready to strike. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the worst. But the attack never came. Instead, I heard a loud thud followed by a guttural roar of anger. I peeked through one eye. My dad stood over the creature, the baseball bat raised high. "Get away from her!" he shouted, swinging the bat. The figure shrieked and disappeared. When the coast was clear, I crawled out of the house. My dad rushed to me, his face etched with worry. "Are you okay? Did it hurt you?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face, and then we both looked back at the house. The front door was wide open. Inside, the orb lay shattered, its glow fading fast. The summoning circle was gone, but in its place was a single word scrawled on the floor in what looked like blood. Soon. We never saw my mom again. The police never found her remains. And that house, well, it's abandoned now. Locals say it's haunted by whatever evil my mom unleashed that day. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this story, be sure to let me know. Until next time, stay safe. Days passed after the failed ritual. The Smurl family waited, afraid to sleep, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to hope. For a while, things seemed quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence before the storm. Then, one night, just past 3 a.m., the house erupted. A violent crashing sound came from the basement. Lights burst one after another, casting the family into flickering darkness. A horrible smell of sulfur filled the home. The youngest daughter began screaming in her sleep, thrashing and choking on air. Jack and Janet rushed to her, only to find deep red welts forming on her arms, as if invisible hands were gripping her. From every wall, the same voice growled in broken Latin, "They are mine!" The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with rage. Furniture flew, dishes exploded, and in the center of it all, a black mist began to take shape. Twisting, stretching, forming a figure with no face, no eyes, only a long, open mouth that seemed to breathe in their fear. The family fled to the front yard in terror, but even outside they could hear the screams coming from the house, not human screams, but something else, something primal, something evil. That was the breaking point. The church, under media pressure and growing public attention, finally approved a full exorcism. It took place weeks later, led by a senior priest with years of experience in spiritual warfare. The ritual lasted 3 days. During that time, neighbors reported hearing wailing, thunderous knocking, and flashes of light from the windows. Inside, the entity fought back. The priest was scratched, the walls cracked, and once every light in the house burst in unison. But slowly, after relentless prayer and ritual, the air began to clear. The weight lifted. And then, silence. True silence. The exorcism worked, at least for the time being, but the damage had been done. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. The Smurl family was broken. In 1988, they moved out of the house for good, never to return. The next family that moved in reported no activity at all. To this day, no one knows why the Smurls were targeted. Some believe the land was cursed. Others think it was an attachment brought from their old home. But the Warrens were clear. The entity was real, and it didn't just want to scare, it wanted to ruin. And maybe it still does. In the summer of 1986, the Smurl family thought they had found peace. They moved into a modest duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a quiet town nestled among green hills and blue skies. Jack and Janet Smurl were hoping to leave behind years of hardship after their home had been damaged in a flood. With their daughters and Jack's elderly parents living in the attached unit, it seemed like a fresh start. But peace was the first thing to disappear. It began with small, almost dismissible signs. Cold drafts moved through tightly sealed rooms. Light bulbs burst without warning. Radios turned on by themselves, always tuned to static. Then came the smells. The stench of rotting meat, sulfur and decaying flowers, appearing at random and disappearing just as fast. Their dog would stand in the hallway, growling at something invisible. At night, they heard scratching, as if long nails were dragging across the inside of the walls. Janet was the first to hear the whispers, just faint murmurs at first, like someone talking in the next room. But every time she checked, the room was empty. One night she awoke to find a dark figure standing at the edge of her bed. She screamed, waking Jack, but when he turned on the light, it vanished. He tried to reassure her, calling it a nightmare. But nightmares don't leave claw marks. Over the following weeks, the family experienced a growing wave of terror. The television flicked on by itself, always displaying static and a high-pitched whine. Family photos were found face down, frames shattered, doors slammed shut with violent force. Janet was pushed on the stairs by something unseen, nearly breaking her arm. Even their neighbors began to notice. One woman swore she heard screams and cries coming from the Smurl house while the family was away for the weekend. Another claimed to have seen a dark shadow standing in an upstairs window, just watching, unmoving. Despite the fear, the Smurls held on to hope. They were devout Catholics and tried to cleanse the house themselves. They prayed, sprinkled holy water, and kept religious icons in every room. But the more they resisted, the more aggressive the force became. It wasn't just a haunting. It was something darker, something old and angry. And the worst was yet to come. Days passed after the failed ritual. The Smurl family waited, afraid to sleep, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to hope. For a while things seemed quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence before the storm. Then, one night, just past 3 a.m., the house erupted. A violent crashing sound came from the basement. Lights burst one after another, casting the family into flickering darkness. A horrible smell of sulfur filled the home. The youngest daughter began screaming in her sleep, thrashing and choking on air. Jack and Janet rushed to her, only to find deep red welts forming on her arms, as if invisible hands were gripping her. From every wall, the same voice growled in broken Latin, "They are mine!" The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with rage. Furniture flew, dishes exploded, and in the center of it all, a black mist began to take shape. Twisting, stretching, forming a figure with no face, no eyes, only a long, open mouth that seemed to breathe in their fear. The family fled to the front yard in terror, but even outside they could hear the screams coming from the house, not human screams, but something else, something primal, something evil. That was the breaking point. The church, under media pressure and growing public attention, finally approved a full exorcism. It took place weeks later, led by a senior priest with years of experience in spiritual warfare. The ritual lasted 3 days. During that time, neighbors reported hearing wailing, thunderous knocking, and flashes of light from the windows. Inside, the entity fought back. The priest was scratched, the walls cracked, and once every light in the house burst in unison. But slowly, after relentless prayer and ritual, the air began to clear. The weight lifted. And then, silence. True silence. The exorcism worked, at least for the time being, but the damage had been done. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. The Smurl family was broken. In 1988, they moved out of the house for good, never to return. The next family that moved in reported no activity at all. To this day, no one knows why the Smurls were targeted. Some believe the land was cursed. Others think it was an attachment brought from their old home. But the Warrens were clear. The entity was real, and it didn't just want to scare, it wanted to ruin. And maybe it still does. By the spring of 1987, the Smurl family was no longer just afraid. They were shattered. The children were sleep-deprived and terrified. Jack had lost weight, suffered near-daily migraines, and was plagued by terrifying sleep paralysis. Janet, once a strong and optimistic mother, had become quiet, jumpy, and hollow-eyed. Even their devout prayers no longer brought comfort. The entity was no longer hiding. It made its presence known daily, scratches on walls, growls in the hallway, and the heavy, choking feeling of being watched constantly. One of the daughters woke up screaming, claiming the black man with burning eyes had stood over her bed all night. The family was deteriorating, and the church was still slow to act. That's when Ed and Lorraine Warren decided to take matters into their own hands. They assembled a small team of spiritual experts, a psychic medium, a former priest, and a demonologist, to conduct an unsanctioned cleansing ritual. It was risky. Without church approval, they couldn't perform a formal exorcism, but they could attempt a binding. and banishment, a dangerous process that might either weaken the entity or enrage it beyond control. The ritual was set for a Saturday night. The team gathered in the Smurl living room, sealing windows, lighting holy candles, and preparing relics. As the medium began calling out the names of the spirits believed to be in the home, the air shifted. The room grew icy cold. The lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed as if the power itself was being drained. Suddenly the walls shook violently, books flew off shelves, and a mirror shattered across the floor without being touched. Something invisible screamed, not with sound, but in the minds of everyone present. A high-pitched mental pressure that made them all double over in pain. The former priest, clutching a crucifix, began the Latin prayer to bind the demonic presence. That's when it struck. The table flipped, pinning the psychic to the floor. Lorraine cried out as something grabbed her arm and left deep claw marks down her skin. Jack was hurled backward into the wall, his nose bleeding. Janet, praying in a whisper, suddenly began speaking in a guttural male voice, eyes rolled back, body convulsing. It was trying to possess her. The team surrounded her, continuing the prayer as Ed Warren forced a relic, a silver medallion, into Janet's hand. She screamed, her voice inhuman, vibrating through the walls. Then silence. Everything stopped. Janet collapsed. The room went still. For a moment they believed it was over, but Lorraine looked toward the hallway and whispered, "It's not gone, it's hiding, and it's furious." That night, the house was dead quiet. No noises, no smells, no shadows. But no one slept, because deep down they knew the calm was not peace. It was preparation. To be continued. In Part 4, The Final Confrontation. By early 1987, the Smurl family's home was no longer just uncomfortable, it had become a prison of fear. The entity, or whatever it was, had grown bolder. The whispers now came in the daylight. Objects moved in front of their eyes. Doors slammed shut when no one was nearby. The smell of rotting flesh returned almost daily. Janet began experiencing terrifying blackouts, moments where she would lose time, only to wake up in different rooms, disoriented and cold. Jack was attacked in the shower, not just startled, but scratched, deep and bloody across his chest. He later described it as if a set of invisible claws had raked him with fury. That was when the family realized they were no longer dealing with a simple haunting. Something malevolent was trying to hurt them. Unable to take it anymore, Janet reached out to a local priest. He came to bless the house, but even during the ritual, lights flickered violently and a crucifix flew off the wall, nearly hitting him in the head. Fear turned to desperation. Word began to spread about the Smurls' plight. Local reporters caught wind of the story, and the strange happenings at 330 Chase Street became the talk of the town. But while some dismissed the events as hysteria or mental illness, others took it very seriously, including paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, known for their work on the Amityville and Perron hauntings. When the Warrens arrived, they immediately sensed something evil. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, claimed she could feel a dark, oppressive force in the home, one that watched them from the shadows, sizing them up. According to her, there were 4 spirits haunting the property. 3 were human, angry, bitter souls trapped between worlds. But the 4th was something else. It was non-human, demonic, ancient. It fed on fear, and it had attached itself to the family. It wasn't the house it wanted. It was them. Over several weeks, the Warrens conducted interviews, took recordings, and brought in other professionals. The evidence mounted, disturbing audio recordings of growls, unexplainable temperature drops, sudden violent outbursts from family members. At night, the team reported being touched, scratched, and once even choked by invisible hands. Still, despite everything, the Catholic Church refused to authorize a full exorcism, citing lack of definitive proof. Instead, they offered prayers and minor blessings. But the demon didn't back down. It grew stronger. Soon it began showing itself more clearly. Jack awoke one night paralyzed as a shadow-like creature climbed onto his chest. It had no face, only a gaping black mouth that let out a soundless scream. The children began having violent nightmares, always about a burning figure standing over their beds, whispering in Latin, and then it tried to possess one of them. To be continued. In Part 3. The Ritual and the Rage. In the summer of 1986, the Smurl family thought they had found peace. They moved into a modest duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a quiet town nestled among green hills and blue skies. Jack and Janet Smurl were hoping to leave behind years of hardship after their home had been damaged in a flood. With their daughters and Jack's elderly parents living in the attached unit, it seemed like a fresh start, but peace was the first thing to disappear. It began with small, almost dismissible signs. Cold drafts moved through tightly sealed rooms, light bulbs burst without warning, radios turned on by themselves, always tuned to static. Then came the smells, the stench of rotting meat, sulfur and decaying flowers, appearing at random and disappearing just as fast. Their dog would stand in the hallway, growling at something invisible. At night, they heard scratching, as if long nails were dragging across the inside of the walls. Janet was the first to hear the whispers, just faint murmurs at first, like someone talking in the next room. But every time she checked, the room was empty. One night she awoke to find a dark figure standing at the edge of her bed. She screamed, waking Jack, but when he turned on the light, it vanished. He tried to reassure her, calling it a nightmare. But nightmares don't leave claw marks. Over the following weeks, the family experienced a growing wave of terror. The television flicked on by itself, always displaying static and a high-pitched whine. Family photos were found face down, frames shattered, doors slammed shut with violent force. Janet was pushed on the stairs by something unseen, nearly breaking her arm. Even their neighbors began to notice. One woman swore she heard screams and cries coming from the Smurl house while the family was away for the weekend. Another claimed to have seen a dark shadow standing in an upstairs window, just watching, unmoving. Despite the fear, the Smurls held on to hope. They were devout Catholics and tried to cleanse the house themselves. They prayed, sprinkled holy water, and kept religious icons in every room. But the more they resisted, the more aggressive the force became. It wasn't just a haunting. It was something darker, something old and angry. And the worst was yet to come. The eerie glow of the haunted mansion's interior consumes the space as Daniel stumbles through the darkened hallway. His heart beats wildly in his chest, the rhythmic sound echoing in the silence that surrounds him. The walls pulse faintly, as if breathing, and every step he takes is accompanied by the sound of his own breath, labored and filled with dread. The house is alive. Daniel can feel it. Scene. The shifting hallway. Daniel reaches a narrow corridor at the far end of the house. The walls here are covered in old, yellowing photographs of people he doesn't recognize. Their eyes seem to follow him as he moves. With each step, the photos appear to shift, and the faces subtly twist into expressions of terror, their mouths contorted in silent screams. He reaches out to touch one of the photographs, but the moment his fingers brush against the glass frame, the image distorts. The face inside warps into something more sinister. The figure in the photo suddenly seems to blink. Daniel quickly pulls his hand back, a chill racing down his spine. "You're not supposed to be here, Daniel." A whisper erupts from the shadows, the voice faint but undeniable. Scene. The girl in red appears again. From the corner of his eye, Daniel catches a glimpse of a figure in red. His blood runs cold. It's her again. The girl from the strange visions, standing motionless at the end of the hallway. Her hair hangs low over her face, hiding her expression. Yet he can feel her eyes burning through him. Suddenly she turns, walking towards him with an eerie calmness. Her footsteps echo, and the air around her grows unnaturally cold. With each step, the light in the hallway flickers, as if the very house itself is flickering in and out of reality. "Why are you still here?" Her voice, low and haunting, drifts through the hallway. She vanishes before Daniel can respond, leaving him in a state of confusion and fear. The air feels thick, as if the house itself is closing in on him. Seen, the unheard voice. He turns around to retrace his steps, but the hallway seems longer now. The walls seem to stretch, the distance between him and the entrance growing further and further. The house is not just changing, it's responding to his presence, reacting to him, as though it has been waiting for him to arrive. Suddenly, Daniel hears something, a low, muffled voice coming from somewhere deep within the house. The voice is distant but growing louder, as if calling him. "Help me, Daniel. I never left." The voice echoes from behind a door Daniel had not noticed before. The door is small, hidden in the corner, barely noticeable amidst the shifting shadows of the house. He approaches cautiously, his breath catching in his throat. As his hand reaches for the doorknob, the door suddenly creaks open on its own, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, an old wooden rocking chair moves back and forth as though someone had just stood up. The room is filled with the scent of musty old wood and decayed furniture. The air is thick with the presence of something or someone unseen. Seen, the echoes of the past. The room is a living snapshot of the past, but it's decaying. Old furniture covered in dust, yellowed pages of forgotten books scattered on the floor, and pictures on the walls of people long gone. But one image stands out, a family portrait of a man, a woman, and a small child. The picture is cracked and the faces are faint, but something about them is disturbingly familiar. Daniel feels his pulse quicken as his mind races. The faces are his own, his parents, his childhood home, memories he hasn't thought about in years. A forgotten life, a life buried in the house's history. He walks further into the room. The floorboards creak beneath his feet as though the house is alive, listening, waiting. In the far corner, a small, hidden compartment catches his eye. It's barely noticeable, a trapdoor half covered in dust. It's not locked, almost as if it's been waiting for him. As Daniel kneels to open it, the air grows oppressively heavy, as if something is trying to stop him. His fingers tremble as they grip the edge of the wooden panel. With a sharp pull, it gives way, revealing a long-forgotten box. It's old, weathered, and locked with a rusted clasp. Seen, the box of secrets. Daniel opens the box, his breath catching as he pulls out the contents. Inside is an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. He flips through the pages, each one filled with strange, fragmented memories. The handwriting is familiar, his own. He can feel his heart racing as he reads the first few lines. "I never wanted to remember, but the house remembers." As he continues reading, the journal reveals disturbing secrets about the house's past, secrets about his family, about the girl in the red dress, and most troubling of all, about himself. The house isn't just haunted, it's alive, and it remembers those who enter. It feeds on their memories, twisting them into a maze of darkness. The journal tells of a black door hidden within the house, one that must never be opened. It said that those who open it are doomed to be trapped in the house forever, their souls consumed by its twisted power. The entry ends abruptly. "The door is a trap, you will see." Seen, the hall of forgotten voices. Suddenly, a cold wind sweeps through the room, causing the pages of the journal to flutter. The temperature drops as Daniel looks up from the book. The hallway is now filled with shadows, and the faint whispering voices grow louder, merging into an incoherent chorus of terror. "Leave now, Daniel. Leave before it's too late." The floor beneath his feet begins to tremble as the house shakes. The walls groan, and the air becomes thick with a sense of impending doom. The girl in red reappears in the hallway, but this time she's not alone. Behind her, the shadowy outlines of figures, silhouettes of people, begin to materialize. These are not ghosts. These are lost souls, their eyes hollow and empty, their mouths frozen in silent screams. One of the figures steps forward. It's his mother, but not the way he remembers her. Her face is hollow, her skin decayed, her eyes black voids. "You have to leave, Daniel. The house won't let you go." The shadows begin to close in, and the temperature drops sharply. The walls start to stretch, contorting as if they're pulling in on themselves. Daniel runs toward the exit, but every door he opens leads him deeper into the maze of rooms, more distorted, more twisted, as though the house is feeding off his fear and shaping reality around him. Seen, the black door calls. As he runs, Daniel finally reaches a familiar door, the black door. It stands there, waiting, almost calling to him. He hesitates for a moment, remembering the journal's warning, but the door is different now. It's pulsing, alive with dark energy, the veins of black wood shifting as though the door itself is breathing. With one last look at the hallway, he reaches for the handle. The house begins to scream, the walls reverberating with a violent crescendo of whispers. Cut to black. The camera opens on a narrow, fog-choked road, slicing through an ancient forest. The trees bend slightly inward, as if whispering among themselves. Dead leaves swirl with every gust of cold wind, and the grey sky above hangs heavy with silence. A single car emerges through the mist, its headlights struggling to penetrate the gloom. Inside the car, Daniel Cross, 32, unshaven, tired-eyed, grips the steering wheel with pale fingers. On the seat beside him, a crumpled envelope with a wax seal marked by a strange symbol. A circle intersected by jagged lines. His GPS lost signal miles ago. The only direction he has now is the hand-drawn map inside the letter. A map signed by his uncle, Henry, presumed dead 13 years ago in a fire that consumed Grey Hollow Estate. As Daniel arrives at the village of Gallows Reach, time seems to stall. The streets are deserted, windows shuttered. Every house looks like it's been abandoned mid-breath. Shadows watch him from behind curtains, but no one comes out. A dog howls in the distance. A wooden sign creaks above an old store. All things end here. Daniel stops at the village inn, where the innkeeper, an old woman with cataract-clouded eyes, gives him the room key without a word. Before he turns to leave, she speaks. "You shouldn't go to Grey Hollow after dark. It remembers blood." Daniel stares at her. She only smiles faintly, as if her words weren't her own. That night, in his room, Daniel dreams. The screen flickers with flickering candlelight. He's walking barefoot down a hallway with no end. The wallpaper peels like skin. The air smells of ash and mildew. A child is crying softly behind a door, whispering his name. "Danny, don't open it again." He wakes drenched in sweat. The next morning, Daniel follows the path to Grey Hollow. The camera glides across rusted gates tangled with ivy. Crows scatter as he pushes open the iron gate, which groans like an animal in pain. The mansion looms ahead, rotted but proud, its windows like black eyes, watching. Vines crawl across the stone. The front door opens with a reluctant creak. Inside, the mansion is a time capsule of decay. Dust dances in beams of pale light slicing through broken shutters. Portraits line the walls, eyes scratched out, smiles faded. A grandfather clock ticks, even though it's not wound. The sound design becomes layered. Footsteps echo just half a second too late. Floorboards creak even when he's still, and whispers brush the edge of the soundtrack. Unintelligible, but persistent. Daniel explores, flashlight trembling in his hand. The mirrors are fogged, but in one of them he sees himself smiling, even though he's not. A cold gust slams a door shut behind him, trapping him in a room with faded red wallpaper and a single chair facing the wall. On a dusty shelf, Daniel finds a wooden box, the same one from his childhood, once forbidden, once locked. Now it opens effortlessly. Inside, a black and white photograph of a woman standing by a strange wooden door. A page torn from a journal, marked with the same strange symbol as the letter a key, wrapped in fabric, warm to the touch. Suddenly, the lights flicker and a faint piano begins to play from somewhere upstairs. Daniel climbs the staircase, each step groaning louder. At the end of the hall, a room stands open. Inside, a mirror covered with a sheet and a child's drawing scattered on the floor. They all depict the same image, a tall figure with no face standing by a black door, identical to the one in the photograph. As Daniel reaches for the drawing, a voice behind him whispers, "He still lives in the walls." He spins around. No one there. He returns to the main hall. His phone rings. The screen is black, static. Then, a voice deep and slow, "Don't let it see you." Night falls quickly. Thunder rolls in the distance. Daniel descends into the basement, drawn by something he can't explain. The air is thick, metallic. Water drips steadily from rusted pipes. He finds an area where the wall looks newer, sealed over with concrete. Using a rusted crowbar, he begins to chip at it. With each strike, a faint knocking responds from the other side, louder, more urgent, as if something has been waiting. The concrete splits, dust rises, the final chunk falls away, revealing a black wooden door, carved with the same symbol from the letter, no handle, just wood that breathes slightly, like a living chest. Daniel steps back, eyes wide. The lantern flickers violently and dies. Silence. Then, from behind the door, a long, deep inhale. Not mechanical, not human. Cut to black. Title fades in, Part 2, The Descent. Coming soon. My grandmother used to tell me stories. Not the kind with happy endings or fairy tale creatures. The kind that made you afraid of ordinary things, like steam, or silence, or showers. I was 10 when she came to live with us. After Grandpa died, something in her changed. She used to be full of light, laughter, sweets in her coat pocket, stories that smelled like old books and sea breeze. But when she moved in, she brought something else with her, something that didn't belong in our house, something that didn't like to be seen. She still told me stories, but they were different now, darker, more vivid, and one of them never left me. It started the night I asked why she never used our shower. She'd just finished brushing her long silver hair. I remember the moonlight caught in it like a web of frost. She paused. Her hand hovered in mid-air. Then she said softly, "Because it's not safe." Not safe. She turned to me, slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "For people like me, people who are sensitive, it is dangerous to close your eyes in the shower." I thought she was joking. I laughed, but she didn't. "You can't see him coming. Not when the water's loud. Not when your eyes are shut." "See who?" "Mr. Long Fingers." She described him like a game. "You know that one kids play, red light, green light, or when someone turns around and the rest sneak up?" "That's what he does," she whispered. "Every time you close your eyes under the water, he takes a step closer." I felt my stomach knot. "And if you keep them closed too long, if you don't open them in time." She didn't finish. Instead, she told me the rule. "If you ever hear a tapping, just faint fingers on the shower glass, do not open your eyes. Not even if you think it's just the pipes, not even if someone calls your name, because it won't be me." That night I barely slept. My dreams were full of steam, of long hands dragging across glass, of someone whispering my name from inside the drain. The next day, the shower was hell. The hiss of water was deafening. The steam clung to me like skin. And when I shut my eyes, just to rinse the soap, my mind screamed to open them again. But worse than the fear was the silence behind the noise, like something was waiting. I started timing it. 5 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. I'd feel pressure, like the air thickened, like I wasn't alone anymore. I'd snap my eyes open, gasping, always too soon. My eyes would burn from the shampoo. But at least I could still see, still check, still be sure I was alone. Then, one morning, I wasn't. The house was quiet, too quiet, but the bathroom light was on and the sound of water was running. No one else was supposed to be awake. I knocked, called for Grandma. No answer. I pushed the door open, and the steam rolled out like breath. She was there, lying in the shower, eyes open, frozen, her hand still against the glass, 3 jagged lines smeared through the condensation, as if she'd tried to write something, but hadn't finished. They said it was a heart attack. Quick, peaceful. They were wrong. She died with her eyes open, mouth parted like she was trying to scream. After they took her body, I sneaked back into the bathroom. The steam still clung to the mirror, and now the lines were clear. She had written something, not unfinished, just hidden until the heat revealed it. 3 words. He's here now. I haven't taken a shower since, only baths, and I make sure my kids do the same. They think I'm weird. My wife humors me. But when the pipes creak at night and the water hisses by itself, I still hear it. The tap, tap, tap of long fingers on the glass. And sometimes, when my eyes are closed, I swear I can feel him move. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more horror stories.
He was born in a small town where opportunities were scarce and dreams were often silenced by the harsh reality of life. From a young age, Daniel knew he wanted more, not out of greed, but out of a deep desire to create something meaningful, not just for himself, but for his family and his community. His parents worked long hours at a local factory, barely making ends meet, but they taught him the value of persistence, honesty, and hard work. Daniel was not the smartest kid in class, nor the most talented, but he was relentless. While others slept, he studied. While others played, he planned. He took up part-time jobs after school, saving every dollar he earned. At 17, he bought his first used laptop with money he had saved from working weekends at a car wash. That laptop became his window to the world, his tool to learn, explore, and imagine. He began teaching himself about business, marketing, and finance through free online courses and YouTube tutorials. It wasn't easy. There were days when he felt completely lost, doubting himself, questioning his goals, and feeling like the road ahead was too long. But every time he thought about quitting, he remembered his parents' tired faces and the sacrifices they made for him. That memory kept him moving forward. At 19, he launched his first online business, an e-commerce store selling handcrafted accessories made by local artisans. He used social media to promote his products, sometimes staying up for 48 hours straight, trying to fulfill orders and answer customer inquiries. The beginning was rough. There were mistakes, delays, even angry customers. But Daniel never backed down. He treated every failure as a lesson. He studied his competitors, improved his services, and reinvested every bit of profit back into his business. Within a year, the small online shop was generating consistent revenue. He expanded his product line, hired 2 part-time employees. He began collaborating with more local creators. Slowly, his reputation grew. What started as a tiny store built from a dream and a second-hand laptop turned into a thriving business that supported dozens of families. But Daniel didn't stop there. He ventured into consulting, helping other young entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes he made. He launched workshops, free mentorship programs, and even funded scholarships for students who wanted to study business. His success story caught the attention of media outlets and investors. But Daniel never let the fame distract him. He stayed grounded, remembering his humble beginnings and the nights he went to bed hungry with only hope to fill his stomach. Years later, Daniel stood on the stage of a prestigious business conference, delivering a keynote speech to an audience of thousands. He spoke not as a millionaire or a CEO, but as a symbol of what hard work, discipline, and vision can achieve. He reminded everyone in the room that success isn't about luck or connections. It's about staying true to your goals, working through the pain, and believing in yourself even when no one else does. Daniel's story became a beacon of hope for many, a reminder that greatness isn't born, it's built. And it all started with a dream, a laptop, and an unbreakable will.